Hi guys, welcome to my video talking about my first solo Twine game called Chicken Fillet Rolls. This is my itch page because I wanted an image to start off this video. So yeah, basically I'm going to talk about the ins and outs of how I found Twine, little insights into the game and how I made it, and the challenges along the way. Obviously this is going to contain spoilers for the game, so please go play it first, which you will find in my description below. And yeah, let's get cracking. So I wanted to get started on learning more narrative systems, and Twine was really great because it was pretty accessible for someone who isn't a programmer, i.e. me. I admire programmers, but that is not me, not yet, definitely not. And so, yeah, it's open source, so you can download it and poke around it. I highly recommend you use the desktop version instead of the web application. Just to be honest, it's my own paranoia. I prefer like saving things locally and having things locally on my computer. But yeah, it was really straightforward to download and get kick started with it. I will say that you can't really just jump into it. It's best to read some of the documentation to know what the heck you're doing, because it's not totally intuitive. Once you get into it, it's totally fine. But in the beginning, when you're poking around, it's not that straightforward. Right, so this is a glimpse into the back end of what my game looks like. So as you can see here, Twine is really used for non-linear storytelling, and I used a a lot of branches within my game, as you can see. So initially when I started this game about chicken fillet rolls, it was really because I just wanted to learn how this system actually worked. So I didn't really have a full intention of creating this pretty large game, you know, large by my standards. And so I really just kind of like went hell for leather on the first day here, which is Monday, which I'm circling here. And then I split them up into different days. So I decided once I got into Tuesday, I was like, actually, you know what? I'm going to make it into a week and then see how I can go from there. Now, I've laid it out in a way that works for me, and particularly when I split it up into days, it made more sense to kind of like bracket things off. But I know loads of people have different choices. Some people like put them down here. Initially, everything was like in this zone, and I was just like trying to track it in my mind, and it kind of looked like Where's Wally, where you're trying to figure things out. I was also using like tags in the wrong way, instead of like actually using them to group things that actually speaks to the Twine backend. I was just kind of like adding random tags that didn't make a whole lot of sense. Anyway, I digress. So this is what it can look like in the backend. You can obviously go much more simpler than this if you're doing a basic thing. So for example, let's just look into Tuesday. So this is what a Tuesday will look like. For me, there's a lot of choices that went on beforehand with Tuesday. Oh, let me move over here. So those affect actually a lot of what the text is shown throughout the rest of the game. So I don't know if that sentence made sense. Anyway, what I'm just saying is that there's a lot of back end stuff that's happening that you don't see as a player. This text dialogue will trigger depending on what choices you make. And that's kind of the fun of it. This is like a clean, relatively clean part of the game. There's different things if I click into it, looks much more messier, but I did my best to make it as clean as possible. And yeah, it was a really interesting learning curve. I spent a couple of months working on this. I think it was maybe about, I want to say like a month and a half maybe, because I was obviously like working my normal job as a lead producer at the same time. And then I was tapping away at this in the evenings. So once I got into it, it was like super addictive, very, very addictive once you get in and you're kind of seeing it come to fruition. So that was really cool. And you can make it as cumbersome as you like, or you can make it as clean as like, depending on what you like, depending on how you like to organize yourself. So there were a couple of challenging things in this. One thing was my mind isn't really... It hasn't really thought about variables a lot, but there are a lot of variables at play throughout this game. And one thing that I did recently was I was just thinking to myself, and I was like, wouldn't it be nice if I could calculate throughout the day how much you're spending on chicken fillet rolls? And then I was like, no, maybe I'll just leave it and be like, oh, this is something I didn't get around to. But then I got to a point where I was like, oh, I kind of want to calculate it. And so I got into this wormhole of calculating. So, for example, this thing here. So this is typically what a more hardcore, I say hardcore very loosely, but with ingredients, right? Because you're choosing ingredients for your chicken fillet roll. I had to like set up a lot of variables to make sure I could track what was chosen and what was not. But then I also wanted to track like, okay, well, if you choose this amount of ingredients, how much will that cost? And when are you tracking that you're going to mention the cost? So at that for the cost, depending on the ingredients, I was over here and I was able to calculate, okay, well, if you choose this amount of toppings, it's going to say this price. If you choose that amount of toppings, it's going to say that price. And then it's like, okay, when are you going to mention this price? And there is another option where you don't pay anything at all, depending on what you're doing. So this is calculated at a certain point in this run. And then here it's referencing back and it's telling you what exactly you chose. Now, it's not telling you the ingredients you chose. That's tracked by something. That's tracked by a different variable, which is also really cool. But this is tracking the actual financial cost of it, which is really interesting. And just like, because it can be so fiddly, Twine is like very particular about your variables and how you name them. So this is an example of when I was like trying to do calculations and I couldn't understand why 3 and 4 were displaying the same number, and it was driving me absolutely mental. And outside here it kind of tracks everything that's going on, which is pretty cool as the debugger tool. And I was like, I just can't, I don't get it. Why isn't it doing it? And I'll tell you exactly what happened. So it was very minor and it was very irritating. So I didn't notice that. Where is it? Yeah. So here, do you see that it says total cost and it has a capital C? So I didn't have a capital C. And that's why it was not taking into account. Now, it's my own fault for putting a capital C in it in the first place and then just using that throughout the entire game. But because I hadn't taken a capital C, it took me absolutely ages to figure out why this was happening. And it was because my brain was just glossed over it at a certain point and I just like, I couldn't handle staring at it anymore. But this morning I looked at it and I was like, oh yeah, that's what's happening. And I also, because I'm me, I created a mini GDD, a game design doc for the game, because I did want to like be able to track what exactly my intention was. When I realized it was going to be bigger than my original, I'm just learning Twine situation, I really decided to lay out everything and kind of go into the nitty gritty on what it was about. There's a few puns in there, just because I wanted to make it relatively lighthearted. But and this is accessible for people if they want to read it. But it does contain spoilers for all aspects of the game, so I would really recommend you actually play it first over on itch. Another thing that I also did was I just ignore this. This is when I was struggling with figuring out prices in my head. But I did have a separate section for when I was just testing out individual variables where I just wanted to be messy. And this was really just useful to have things totally separate to the main game and like kind of shove it in a different mind space. So that was super handy to do. One thing that's really annoying is that it's really easy to delete things accidentally. I know there's a big delete button here, but there's no warning. So like, for example, I don't need this, delete. Oh, it's gone. You know what I mean? And so that is kind of like a bit stressful because I did that once or twice by accident. When my finger hit off the delete button on my keyboard, which was not fun. I didn't need that passage, so I'm not concerned about it. But yeah, that was kind of annoying. A few things as well. I kind of mentioned this in my GDD, but it's pretty easy to test. You can just test from different sections, and you can start the story here to test from different sections. But if you want to test like your local images or music, you have to put it into the HTML file and then upload it again before you can do that. You can't do that within this system, which was a bit annoying because I have a lot of sounds that heighten the atmosphere of what's going on, but minor things in the overall scheme of things. Another thing that they don't really tell you is you should always back up your game. Now that sounds pretty obvious, but a lot of people don't do it. I publish to file religiously because I'm so paranoid, and I have backups saved in different locations because I just like, I think one day happened where I lost like maybe like 10 passages and there was like a big gap and I was like, what is that gap doing there? I have no idea how it happened or why it happened, but I was so glad that I was able to just like to revert to things and be like, oh no, there it is, that's fine. it's all good. Overall, though, I do recommend Twine. I particularly recommend there's many resources out there which I've listed in my GDD, but also the Twine Discord community is really, really good. They've been so helpful to me in trying to figure out things. But really, the main thing with Twine is that you need to be the person who's inputting stuff, because if you're just copying and pasting loads of code, you're not going to actually learn how to figure it out yourself. So in that respect, I recommend you just playing with it, to be honest. Start with something really simple, just like a basic choice of just making a choice between two things and work from there. Yeah, so this was a little insight into what my back end looks like and how I've been creating this first solo game. And if you are interested in checking out Chicken Fillet Rolls, it is on itch and it can be played in your browser, so you don't actually have to download anything. And yeah, thank you for watching. This was a little insight. I'm looking forward to looking at different narrative tools very soon, because I do want to upskill in those. But I really had a good time making this, and I hope to make more stories. Thanks for watching.